All right, so we are recording. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to day 2 of Hissy Fit 2021, the virtual self-publishing forum. Today's special guests are a just powerhouse of a duo of students that exist in the graduate program currently that I begged to please come talk to us about self-publishing. And at first they refused, and I said, hey, that's fine. That is your prerogative. They said no. However, I'm persistent. I'm very persistent, if nothing else. And I wore them down. Yeah, I wore them down until finally they agreed. So with us today, we have grad student Kelsey Norman and grad student Khalid Johnson. Welcome, you guys. Welcome. Thank you for coming in and talking with us. And so much like my other panels for this event, I like to start with just kind of a general, just kind of a beach entry question, if you will, just nothing like too deep. But if you would, each of you just kind of spend a little bit of time here up front, giving us a little bit of your comics origin story, how you came into comics. So like what got you interested in the art form, et cetera. It could be really anything. I guess, Kelsey, why don't you start? Khalid will follow.
I mean, if any of y'all have been in a class with me, I like to go first so I don't have a panic attack waiting. Hey, so I'm Kelsey. My last name is Norman, and so I've always been into comics. Like specifically, I was into manga. I was very elitist about my choices. I didn't read any of those, superhero American comics. That's like, ew, gross, right? So, growing up, I didn't really realize you could be a comic book artist, So I just got my undergraduate degree in art, and I was like, oh, I'm going to go into marketing, And so my last year of college, I was like, oh, I'll take an internship in marketing. And I did, and I hated it. So word to that. And so I was like, well, what do I like to do with art? And I've always drawn comics. I've always had ideas about comics. I've always drawn them. And so I was like, why don't I just do that? So I took a year after I graduated. I went to, it's called the Sequential Artist Workshop, and it's in Gainesville, Florida. And it was run by Tom Hart. And they're still doing it, but I did a year-long program. So it's like, it gives you like a taste of like art school, if that makes sense, but in like a kind of low-key vibe kind of setting, And it was great. Unfortunately, they don't do the year-long anymore, but they do still do like week-long workshops and stuff, which are really fun to go and check out. But yeah, and so when I was doing that, I realized, hey, I kind of still want to like learn more about comics. I don't really want to stop learning. Like I've always enjoyed learning. And so the fact that it was like, yeah. So I applied for grad school and I got in. So yeah, that's how I got here. And that's my comic journey.
Nice. Thank you, Kelsey. Khalid.
All right, so I'm Khalid. My comics journey started when I first saw Spider-Man in like 2002, I guess is when that movie came out. And my dad had like a huge X-Men collection and was big into Superman. And so unlike Kelsey, I was drawn to superhero Western style comics. And I've always wanted to draw comics, and so I was drawing, little crappy made up superheroes when I was in like elementary school. And that continued until the point where, it got a little bit more professional, but not where I wanted it to be. And so, now we're here where I'm getting it to where I want it to be.
Nice. Yeah, I think you both are definitely getting it to where you want it to be, for sure. I think already this quarter. I've seen some really awesome stuff from you guys. With that, so you guys have obviously mentioned your sponges. You want to learn. You want to just continue to grow. What's kind of unique about both of you guys, though, it's not every student is doing this, but you guys are putting your work out there. You're self-publishing. You're collecting your work into books. You're putting it on the web in some way, shape, or form. Why did you guys what got you into self-publishing your work? What was that spark for you that was like, hey, it's not enough for me to know how to draw. I have to go that extra mile to make it an actual thing that exists in the world that someone can take with them. What was that spark?
Do you want to split it up? Do you want to go this time first, Khalid, and mix it up?
Sure, I'll go first. So I've always wanted to do comics, right? And so, the idea was I have things that I kind of want to keep and not pitch. And so having stories that I wanted to tell, I was just like, well, there needs to be an avenue for me to put stuff out. And websites, not super expensive, but when you're an undergrad and not making a lot of money, kind of expensive. And so I was just kind of uploading onto Google Drive and sharing it to friends. And then, when I made the money, I actually bought a website domain that makes it so much more convenient to put comics up. And, my whole thing, I guess the biggest thing that kind of gave me this idea to kind of put my own work out there under my own kind of umbrella was this idea of authentic representation, kind of the same thing that pushed Dwayne McDuffie in putting Milestone out. And so, he's one of the influences of me doing that.
Nice.
Yeah, that's way more cooler than my answer. So, once again, I started off with manga. I didn't realize you could just print off a comic. So when I went to SAW, the big thing about SAW was that the final was you have to print out your zine. SAW is very underground comics. If you guys that's kind of their base, they don't really talk about superheroes. I learned maybe a sprinkle of history about superhero comics. That doesn't matter. What matters is your authentic voice, your authentic art. If it looks like a stick man, it doesn't matter. You print it out and you sell it. So this was my final for my year long. It's actually my characters, Fisher and Hugh, which I use them all the time. They're some of my favorites. I actually did a vellum print, which if you didn't know, you can print on vellum, and people love that kind of stuff. If you just put it, and it's just a little clear sheet of paper, you put it in the printer. And the fun thing about this is it's actually legal sized paper. So it's the same width as a normal piece of paper, because when you fold up just like a normal piece of paper size, it kind of looks, a little bit like this maybe, which is another one of my zines. But if you do the legal size, it gets kind of longer, which I liked. So this was still when I was doing full traditional. And so just, so much work. But the fact that I have it and I can show it is what's pretty awesome to me. So yeah, so that was the final for SAW. And so that's how I got the idea of, if I have something that I can print out, I should just print it out. Why should I not? I have a printer,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I have cardboard, I have cardstock, I have everything,
Yeah, that's cool. I like how you're also, for the first mini comic, that vellum inset is kind of very complex approach for a self-published work.
Yeah, I wish SAW had a virtual tour of their zine collections, because Tom Hart and just all of the teachers there have like their own zine collections that they put into, and like there's some that a guy went to a map printer, and he got his comic printed on a map, and so it unfolds itself like a map.
Whoa.
And there's like books where it's just a front page, but then it folds out like an accordion to show this entire battle scene, and you just put it back in. And like a lot about Saw was that the zine itself is a piece of art, so go crazy, like maybe even like add your own watercolor to a couple of the pages. People will love that because it's unique to your book, so
Mm-hmm.
that's why I like self-publishing.
Yeah, you're more of control of like kind of all of the little pieces.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure. Like with that, because this is a good kind of segue into the next section of the conversation, which is like our early first experiences in self-publishing. I think it's important to kind of share those and talk about those and kind of assess like, this is where I've started, but this is how I got to where I am now. I think it's also helpful for those that might be joining us that are interested in self-publishing their work in print to hear kind of the stories of those first experiences as well. Kelsey, since you just shared kind of your very first experience with that vellum inlay, why don't you kind of continue that? So with that, like you said you made that at SAW.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You were still like kind of in control of all like the creative decision making with that project. Tell us a little bit more about how that project all came together.
Yeah, so SAW is set up like a normal kind of year-long program, and so our final is make a book. And so I wanted to make a book, and I got this green paper off of Amazon, and it's just legal size green paper, and I'm like, I'm doing Your Soul Sucks. I'm doing my gross, nasty trash children. And that's what I did. And so the main thing about it is for me, it was figuring out how to put the paper in correctly so you get the correct sides.
Yeah.
And then you fold it, and then eventually I got it and it was totally fine. But and then SAW also had a risograph system, which I had a little class. So this is just a risograph. This is like a one color print on a risograph, and it's a little zine I joined with the rest of the class. And so the pink on top of the blue is the other part of the risograph. So we were talking about risograph yesterday, and it's just a one color printer. And I absolutely adore it, but it's very expensive. And there's my comic. And it's about Cheddar, the dog, who really likes the poodle, but the poodle's very strong. Okay, so and then I drew a little room that they live in. So, and like I drew these things like on scrap pieces of paper. They were just little rip outs from my sketchbook. And the teacher was like, just scan it and we'll put it in the risograph. And I'm like, what? Like, I didn't even plan to do that with these. And he's like, no, just do it. So that's important. That fact. What else was I supposed to be talking about, Kevin?
Oh, well, just that first experience, like things that you learned from putting your work out there for the first time. And that I think that attitude is like what you just mentioned, just do it, is super helpful starting out.
Also, one more thing, if you have a bunch of zines that you printed out and it's like, oh, I can't go to a con or whatever, first off, sell them at a con if you can. Just have a table and have like a little post-it note for how much they are. Like, people love this kind of stuff. But if you don't have access to a con, like go to independent bookstores, independent coffee shops, independent comic shops, and just be like, hey, I have a bunch of self-printed zines. Do you want to sell them here? And, a lot of people really love to have that kind of indie feel to those places. And so if you put your work there, it will get sold. And a lot of times they'll even give you like a commission you know, for how much you sell, but then they'll also give you some money starting off to just have your work.
Yeah,
So,
so
like, don't-
walk us through that. When you say commission, what does that mean? What is that process like?
so it's like they'll give, so what happened with me was they gave me like maybe like $5 for a stack, basically, but then they sold them for like about $5 each, right? And so I would get a commission of $2. So if I went back and collected my money, I would get that $2 for every book they sold.
Hmm.
So like you may think that something that you make isn't good or you're not happy with it. That doesn't matter. If it looks cool, if it looks like a zine, they're gonna want to have it. I swear to you. Don't be afraid.
Hmm. Yeah, there is kind of a built-in audience for stuff that looks specifically handmade, Xeroxed, all of that. I think that's part of um, the appeal of those kinds of books. Um, yeah, I think that's really good, really helpful. Khalid, jump in here now. Your first experiences? Are you stapling like Kelsey? Are you folding and stapling and binding vellum for your books?
Oh no, I didn't print. I
See, I'm
didn't print.
jealous though. So
In undergrad, we had these kinds of I'm not gonna say like super low end, but they were kind of low end printers, and so color quality was trash, and so I printed like a page, and I was like, yeah, no, we're just gonna keep it digital. Um, but no, when I first started out, um, panel borders were a thing that I was like, this is an afterthought, and look, suffered for it because it's definitely not that. Yeah, so first book I did that like I did 23-ish pages on and like published or whatever. That initial review was not bueno, but you live and you learn. And so, after I learned a little bit, um, kind of figured out how making comics actually works and how that process works a little better. Um, as far as distribution goes, so I distributed through like a few indie comic sites, um, but then it just kind of just hit. I was like, you know, I'm cool just distributing the stuff myself. And so for a little bit, it was Google Drive files, and now it's my website where I distribute entirely for free, which is, counterintuitive to making money, but at the same time, um, I have certain beliefs, about distributing media and people being able to kind of have open access to things. Um, and so, as a means to try to get paid, I have Patreon set up and just kind of direct people there. And, I'm producing a lot faster than I was when I first started out in undergrad, and it looks a lot better. And so, more people read and more people will throw me money.
Hmm. So you're saying that you get your books printed. That's through a print on demand resource. Is that local, or is that like somewhere else, or where do you get your books printed?
So the place where the company that I used, Mixam Printing, Mixam, um, and I think they are in the UK, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh,
Um,
okay, nice.
but
Wow.
their quality is pretty good. It's not overly expensive, probably aside from a shipping fee, which I don't like paying. But the print quality is really nice, and they have a decent selection as far as like paper materials. And so I personally prefer them. I've looked for local printers. I know there's one in Decatur, but I'm not sure how well they handle printing comics. And so, I'm looking local, but right
Yeah,
now,
yeah, yeah. No, I mean, shop local is just a fad, but not necessarily. If you can find something that works for you, I think that's great. Yeah, that would be the trick to keep that shipping cost down on the books, especially if they're coming from the UK. Um, but that's cool. I think that's an approach that I think oftentimes scares a lot of people, like when it comes time to print, in that, you know, depending on the printer, and as you said, you found a well-priced one, but the prices can kind of quickly add up um, if you're kind of doing a large print run. Now, Khalid, let's take it down a notch here, okay? Now, you mentioned uh, a non bueno review that you got. Now, I'll make a deal with you. Make a deal, okay? If you can remember a phrase from that review, because I think it's important to kind of remember these things for when you're successful, and then you shove them down their throats later on. But I'll share with you a phrase that was used to describe one of my early on comics that got reviewed. If you share with me one of the phrases that was used to describe yours.
Okay, I'll go first.
Okay.
The one that like really jumped out at me, I think it's towards the end of the review, was something to the effect of, you know, there are solid ideas here, and um, he's doing everything, and so he's doing the inking, the coloring, the writing, all of it, the whole process, which is to be commended, but it can be a little rough in areas. So maybe he should, just focus on the writing and look for somebody else to do the art.
Oh, yeah, I've gotten that one too. I've gotten that one too.
Oh, my heart hurts. Oh my God.
Okay, now it's my turn. Now I believe I have, not that it's seared into my memory at all, but I have to really kind of focus on getting this exact right, because there's the word placement is imperative. But I believe my first mini comic, the phrase "a grueling trip through the land of suck."
Oh my God. Oh God, that is too much.
However, like I said, I'm here now, right? I've had a lot of successes since then, but you always remember that first review.
Like I haven't really gotten my stuff reviewed. People would say like, oh, your art looks like Tim Burton and like Cartoon Network. And I'm like, yeah, no, it pretty much does. But what my kind of thing was in high school, I was a super artsy kid. And I was just as talkative as I am now. And I desperately wanted to be in the AP art class, desperately.
Mhm.
And my teacher told me, no, you just draw cartoons and talk all day. And I'm like, it tore my heart out.
Yeah.
That's why I think if you want to do art, just do art. Don't listen to anybody who says you can't,
That's
like,
right.
oh, yeah.
That's
So
right.
suck it, Mr. Chapman, if you're watching this.
So good. All right, very good. I don't want to dwell on that, but I do think it's kind of very relatable, and something that you may go through as you put yourself out there. And so, yeah, the first, have we covered? Was there any other experiences from the first forays that you wanted to share? First experiences with self-publishing? I don't want to glaze over this. I want to make sure that we're okay.
You're always going to feel like yours is lesser than somebody else's, but it's not,
Mhm.
so don't worry about that.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, the biggest advice I was constantly getting when I went to conventions was, just do the work, just start somewhere. Everybody starts somewhere, and so I just started in a place that comparatively now sucked, but generally gonna suck starting out anyway. So
Mhm.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. And so kind of a nice little segue into the next bit. So when you were starting out, Khalid, you mentioned you were talking with other artists and kind of slowly becoming part of the community of comics, part of the kind of the industry, becoming a part of the industry. Um, what were some experiences there? What would you take away from like that kind of experience of like, putting your work out there and not just idiot reviewers reacting to it, but other artists reacting to it?
Um, I mean, it's good to have a community that's kind of that like is mutually pushing each other to,
Mhm.
keep producing and is kind of giving on the spot critiques of things that, can be improved on, things they like. And you're hearing it from somebody that's doing the same thing. And so, often you hear like this kind of thing about like it being competitive. And while it is competitive, it's also a community, right? And so pushing each other to do better and encouraging each other, like good with the bad, as opposed to a one-off review, just kind of looking at this one piece of work that you put out, where you have people that constantly have eyes on your stuff, and it feels validating, right? Because you're regarded within the same kind of professionalistic sphere with people that are doing the same thing.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think that's right. Kelsey, would you jump onto that? Is
Yeah,
that
yeah.
your experience the same?
My year long at SAW, I met some of my best friends in the world. We still talk, even though it's been 18, 19, 20, 21, 3, 4 years since then. We still have weekly Discord chats, and we share work that we work on. So really, find people who you mesh with and who do something similar to what you do, and that's just only going to help you grow in the long run. Um, like industry wise, the more you put yourself out there, the more likely you're going to meet people who are so far above you, you can't believe they're sitting next to you at a con, which happened to me at like a little tiny con in West Virginia. And I was sitting next to one of the people who did Squirrel Girl and like Red Sonja. And like she did that page where Loki is like talking, but then it's like he's lying whichever way you look at it, and there's Cat Loki. Anyway, great. She's so cool. And she looked at my work and she's like, yeah, just really keep going. You really have, cool stuff here. You have cool ideas and you just need to keep doing it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. And like, she has this whole setup of like, pillars of her work and like, little shelves and everything. And like, I'm over here with like post-it notes on my little underground comic zines. And it was great. So just, don't be afraid to put yourself out there.
Yeah, that's really heartwarming. I've got a similar experience to that as well. Khalid, do you have an experience like that where you showed someone maybe that you knew who they were, but like you were just showing them your work and you got a positive review of some kind, or
So I'm not good at like putting my work out there, but I went to a convent when I spoke at Dragon Con, I want to say in 2019.
uh,
Um, I had a friend in my undergraduate program that would just like snatch my sketchbook and go up to random people and beg.
it's good to have that friend for sure.
It really
Yeah.
is. I wouldn't do it. So me and my other friend who, really big into like mainstream, we knew that Alex Sinclair was in Artist Alley. And so my friend like snatches my sketchbook, runs up to Alex Sinclair and is like, yeah, here's his stuff. And Alex Sinclair was like, yeah, no, this is solid. You just gotta kind of keep working, but you have the fundamentals. And if you find the right person to kind of put you in touch within the industry, you probably definitely have a job.
Mhm. Yeah, that's cool. That's really cool.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, like I have a similar story. I went to San Diego Comic-Con. I don't think, okay, so just from my experience, I want to just let everyone know. Like, I think it's important to kind of gradually increase the size of the conventions that you're going to. You don't want to start with a San Diego Comic-Con like your boy did. So, but you live and you learn. So, and that's also connected to how I got that really awesome review of my first mini comic. But anyway, I was taking my first mini comic to San Diego Comic-Con, and it was a massive Comic-Con then. However, it was small enough to where you could still get into Hall H for like the Hollywood stuff the same day. You didn't have to sleep out overnight, camp out or anything like that. It wasn't that big. You would stand in line for your pass the day of, and you could be able to get it and whatever. It's not the chaos that it is now, but it was still huge. I mean, but I remember showing my work to an artist named Mark Schultz. And if you're not familiar with Mark Schultz, look him up. But he did this comic called Cadillacs and Dinosaurs, and it's awesome. If you, I'm not saying do this, but if you compare my artwork to Mark Schultz, you will see there's no comparison whatsoever. But I knew who he was. I think a couple of my SCAD professors knew him personally and would talk about his art occasionally in class. And so I saw his name in a poster and him standing next to the poster. I was like, hey, I'm gonna go over and talk to Mark Schultz. And I was expecting him to just kind of be like, oh yeah, thanks. But he stopped what he was doing. Like, I think he was doodling or something. He stopped what he was doing. And he talked with me, and I said, hey, I just wanted to give you my mini comic. I'm in so and so's class right now, and he's like, oh great, let me look at it. And he took the time to like go through. He read the whole thing, just page by page. Like, he's not critiquing me. He's just like, oh yeah, this is kind of funny. Oh yeah, like this is well laid out. Like just saying like comments like that. The best piece of advice he gave me was to put your name on the cover, you dummies. And that's my advice to you guys. Put your names on your covers forever.
I like it on the back, Kevin. It looks back.
No, it needs to be on the front. It needs to be on the front. Let everyone know who's doing the work. But that was his piece of advice, and I to me that is just such a good experience, and I've come to realize that a lot of people that I've met in the industry have had that same first experience with whoever it was. For the most part, there have been some ones where it's like, yeah, I hate that guy, but for the most part, you've had some really, like, I think as artists, it's also our job is to, once we get established in the industry, to kind of pass it down. And people are going to be approaching us to get our feedback and thoughts on their work as well. And so to handle that in a way that, we were kind of handed that ourselves, I think is great. All right, so now we've talked about community and kind of building it. We've been putting our stuff out there for a while now. I'd like to talk about some do's and don'ts, just from our own experiences, things that students or people, not students, starting out in self-publishing, from our own experience. What are some do's and don'ts? Let's whoever wants to start us off.
I guess I could start. So, don't be afraid to print out something on a piece of copy or paper and fold it up into a book. It doesn't matter what it is. Because I've been to a lot of panels where someone will stand up and they'll ask the panelists, they'll be like, hey, I have a really, really weird idea for a comic. And, everybody in the audience is just, please don't tell us the idea of the comic. Just show us the idea of the comic when you print it out, like don't be afraid to make whatever you want, if you don't end up selling it or using it, whatever, it's in your keepsake box forever and it's just for you, so yeah, so do print anything you want.
Yeah.
Copyright can just go away, doesn't matter. My Mickey X Donald fanfic that I've drawn is going on my con table forever. No, I'm not. No.
Maybe, yeah, slightly towards the back, but yeah.
Yeah. No, it's more towards the back because the bright colors lure in children. So just if you do have a lot of bright colors, just make sure your other comics are more towards the back, which is an actual thing you should think about doing.
Yeah,
if you see
totally.
like a dad and like a bunch of kids coming, just maybe put your colorful stuff that doesn't feature swear words on top of their comics before they get there. Another helpful hint.
Yeah, signage also helps with that. Special labels.
Signage. Yeah.
For sure. I've run into that problem as well, for sure. Khalid, why don't you share with us one of your pieces of advice, do's or don'ts, either or, it's your call.
Biggest piece of wisdom that I have had passed down to me, and none of you guys are, but just figured, gonna say it for posterity's sake, don't be an asshole.
Present company excluded.
I mean, that's just good advice in general. So
expand on that. What can come across as being an a-hole? What kind of practices could get you labeled as such?
Being overly persistent in trying to shoving your work to people that either don't have the time or don't seem particularly interested, and just being pushy, or comparing yourself to other people, but like not in the way where it's like, oh my gosh, you're so good and I wish I was that good, but like talking down on people and holding yourself out as better than other people. Yeah, those are the biggest things. Don't be an arrogant POS, and don't be pushy.
Yeah, like your work isn't any better than anyone else's work, Like, doesn't matter if you've published 1 million comics or you've published one. We're all the same. We're artists,
Yeah, I think that's good. What are some other do's and don'ts, you guys? Well, come on. Like you've got some starters in the self-publishing world. What advice are you going to give them? What are you going to steer them clear of?
See, I'm very freeform. I'm like, it's art, draw with a crayon, but don't. You can, it'll look great, but this is like the most like hypocritical advice because I'm the same way. Like, don't be afraid to go up to people at an artist alley. But I'm a hypocrite because I've been on both sides of the table, and I'll talk to you when you come up to me, and I'll make you stay at my table. But I can't do that when I'm on the other side of the table. I have a very hard time going up to people. So don't be like me and talk to them.
Yes, they're people just like us. They're people just like us, for sure. Yeah, that's what part of the being in the community is all about. Really, it's helping each other out, kind of talking, get to know each other. I mean, it's all slightly heightened when you're at a convention. If you have any sort of social anxieties, walking into an artist alley, the worst is when it might be like a downtime and you're like the only one in the aisle, and then everybody's eyes goes to you. I've done it tons of times, but if I'm about to walk to the bathroom or to my table or something like that, and I'm cutting down an aisle where I'm the only one in there, I will go around. I'll find another aisle that's more crowded.
Yeah, no, like I have social anxiety and generalized anxiety disorder. So I'm always nervous and jumpy. And so I try to channel that into this facial persona that you see in front of you. But there's certain situations where I can't, and that's group situations, or I'm by myself and people around me are expecting things like no. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, and Khalid touched on it earlier, and I want to get your thoughts on this, but bringing a friend, how frequently do we bring friends to these events to kind of help us out?
Frequently is a word. I'll typically go with like one person,
Yeah.
because everybody works, and so it's hard to people take off. But when I've gone with groups, it's generally been more successful because I have anxiety about talking to people. And so, when I have my friends that are more outgoing and more extroverted, and they're more willing to like speak up for me, definitely helps in getting my work more seen.
Yeah. Yeah. That's definitely a good way to handle it. Rolling up with a group or a buddy. Back in the day when I was trying to hit the pavement with my mini comics and other things, following up with editors at conventions from Editors Day. Like I would always go with Jarrett Williams, my good buddy, and we would a couple things to our benefit, right? We'd always have somebody to split the hotel with, travel expenses like taxis and everything like that. We'd always be able to count on each other to be that like resource for that end. But ultimately, the best part about it was face-to-face connections. It was more about like, if I knew Jarrett was there, I could have fun with Jarrett, and then eventually people would like get in on it, come in and then we could meet that way. So that's a definite workaround for any kind of social anxiety, because it's there, and it's something that I think is very common at conventions. I think while it's kind of amazing that like a group of introverts can create such extroverted art. It's like it's pretty amazing, but it's also something that you have to just kind of like be aware of, in the community. What are some things that you ran into, maybe some snafus in production, like making your comics, or things that you might have not really saw coming down, like budgeting correctly, or things with the design of your books that just needed to change, that came out a little differently? What are some areas there that you maybe want to caution people with?
So I'll go, because like every single one of my books that I've made has something wrong with it. Every single one. So first off, the first one that I made, I had already printed out all the pages. However, I misspelled some words, and so I had to this was back when I was just hand lettering, which Kevin, look at all these, Kevin.
Oh no, don't do this to me, don't do this, you don't.
Just look at it. Look at it, Kevin. And if you don't think I'm going to sell it for $5 at a con, you're wrong. So there's that one. And then this was my next one that I did, which also, it's just legal tabloid size again, but it's hot dog. And I was like, I'm going to try color. The way color prints is very different from the way black and white print. And I just printed this out like at Office Max. So the colors are all wrong. And look at these edges. It's crazy, but I still kind of love this. I kind of love this idea for strips. It's like it's weird. I still like it. I want to do this size eventually again. And then my latest one that I did for Hissy Fit last year, I haven't had time to publish anything this year because I'm an awful, yeah, okay. This one I actually did cardstock. on the inside instead of printer paper. And Kevin came up to me while I was printing and was like, hey, this is cardstock on here, right? I'm like, yeah, that it was definitely planned. It's supposed to look like a book, Kevin, like a real thick book. So
A very sturdy book.
it's very sturdy. I could definitely get someone's eye with one of these corners, you know. But yeah, and then like these were just all like Instagram little comics that I had, and I like posted like 1 square or 2 squares at a time a couple years back, and I was like, I'm just gonna shove these all on one piece of paper and then put like sketches from class on the back, and I did, and I sold it for $5 at a con, and it's great. But yeah.
All right. Khalid, similar pieces of advice. You know, you work with print on demand. Were there any kind of snafus with that whole process that you might want to caution students with?
I think the first time I tried to send something, like upload like a PDF or whatever, I got like an email back from Mixum, and they were like, so these bleeds need to be adjusted, and we're not sure that we can adjust that for you in a way that you'd like. And so if you can just go back and do that. And so, you know, I didn't know what the F a bleed was. And so, you know, learning how bleeds work and how those will not affect your printing. And making sure that your colors are not, they don't run too much into each other. Otherwise, they're going to print really wonky. And so I tried to be more cognizant in using colors that kind of exist within a similar space. I took the time to try to learn what bleeds were and how they work. Also, know your budget, because you don't want to overprint and spend way too much money that you don't make back. Also, if you're printing on demand, you probably want to definitely have people that are like locked in for a copy of the book before you get the book printed, because otherwise that's a loss and you don't want that.
Yeah, that's great advice. And that kind of brings up something that I'm curious about. How large are your, and this is for both of you guys, how large are your print runs typically?
I think the highest I've done has been 50.
50?
And honestly, I sold like 35. So, you know, I still didn't sell everything, but at least I have books that I can just sell if ever I'm like at a convention or something. But generally I print around 20, 25, just like in a safe margin.
Yeah.
So for me, since it's a little bit more, you know, like free form, and I don't really care how it looks in the end. Saw taught me was that print more than you think you're gonna need. So this first comic that I have, I printed 100. There are 100 copies of this in the world, and yet I still only have like maybe 20 left out of the years. And so, you know, I'm glad, because I always have one that I can just be like, hey, this is my first comic, look how dumb it is, you know, like I can do that kind of stuff. And then I can also, you know, like have like a couple on my con table and just be like, yeah, you know, these are, you know, it's just like $5. This was my first comic, and if you want to see what it looks like before I did this other stuff, here's this, you know. So I've always been under the impression that you make more than what you need. And then it also depends on how much of the pretty cardstock you have. So if you bought like 2 rolls of cardstock, it's like, okay, that's as many comics as I'm going to make.
Yeah, no, that's also smart too. Like if you're taking on a lot of the responsibilities of the assembly and production of the actual book itself, you can cut down quite a bit on cost. That potentially lets you print more. But you know, there's that line, like you don't want to like just overprint. I mean, you know, you don't want to underprint. Underprint is almost worse in some ways, in that like you're missing out on. In some ways, it's bad. In other ways, it lets you know that you're onto something good if you sell out.
Yeah, like I got some merch done. So, you know, I have like a little Van Gatto palette pets pin you can get, you know, and and it was going to be, oh yeah, it's going to be for Hissy Fit last year. Yeah. And then COVID happened and it was still in the mail. And so I have like 100 pins.
Oh,
Just
you eventually got them. I remember this story
yes,
from last year.
they're waiting in the wings, you know. As soon as I get a con table again, it's gonna be like, wow. And like, you know, I budgeted out how much I was gonna sell them for, basically. And so, you know, I got like 100 and it's like, okay, there's gonna be like 15 per pin because enamel artist pins are like, they're big, they're hot, they're spicy, you know. So like, don't be afraid to charge like $15-20 for something that's like good and you like it. And also like make merch for yourself. Like I just made some stickers this winter of my Palette Pets characters, and I just have a couple sheets of that because I wanted it first off, and also they look great and people will eventually want them when I have a con table. So
Cool. So also, I guess talking about merch for a second, Kelsey, you mentioned pins and stickers. Are those typically the things that sell best for you as far as merch, or is there like what's been your experience with merch?
I was just basing off of what I experienced at cons, and you know, buying like a $20 book of like a story I'm not too sure on, you know, wasn't a thing I would necessarily do. But if I saw a kick-ass pin with a cool character from the book, I'm like, I'm buying that pin. I don't care if it's $20, the same amount of the book. I want the pin. And then, you know, maybe eventually I'll circle back for the book. Same thing with stickers. If you have just cute little stickers for like $5, like, of course, I'm going to buy your stickers. I love stickers. So, yeah. So, like, your merch is, it's not as important as your comics, obviously, but for like a table setup and like for like a conglomeration, you know, your own kind of branding setup, they're good, and they're easy cash for when eventually we are able to sell them again.
Yeah, well, they do a number of things, right? They bring people over, you know, they get people kind of interested in your booth. There's an out for them in that, like, they don't have to buy the book. They can, well, you know, I feel bad not getting anything now that I'm over here. I could just get the sticker and still feel like I'm helping out the person. You know, there's a lot of benefits to merch. Something that I was remiss when I was starting out. I did not consider merch, and I was mainly just, I think it was slightly more along the lines of Kelsey, the experience that you had at Saw, where I was like, it's all about the comics, man. We're here to make comics, and so as such, I feel like I did miss out on a little bit of financial support through that merch. Khalid, did you have any experience with merch, or are you just a comics man, just like myself?
I'm just like you. I've been thinking about merch a bit more, but do you know how hard it would be to sell a little racial item for Stay Woke?
Well, yeah, there's some areas.
I'm like, oh no. And like somebody who hasn't read the book will come up and be like, you know, like
right. There's some context there that it's sort of, it comes into play also in kind of what Kelsey was talking about. If you've got a sticker of your character, you run the risk. If you buy that sticker but you're not familiar with the property, some fan person's going to come up to you and want to talk your ear off, and you're like, I have no idea, I just like the sticker. Then you're that guy, right? Then you're that guy. What are you going to do with that? You just ruin someone's day, or you know, what are you going to do? What are you going to do?
I think you could still do stickers of like the title, Khalid, you know, like I think you can.
The title might be the only way to go.
Just keep it real, just vague, you know, just
there's probably something out there, Khalid. Just keep thinking about it. Maybe some like something to do with the title. I think maybe just some sort of like blob, you know, like some black blob stuff. That would be cool. I don't know. I don't know. All right,
Or like a
we'll
coffee
save that for
logo,
class.
like the added blackness, you know?
Uh-huh.
So it's like a little coffee can sticker. It's like the added blackness or whatever. And like people are like, whoa.
Oh, yeah, and you're just basically selling them jars of watered down ink, but it's like, get your blackness here. That's the way to go. That's the way to go. Yeah, we'll refine that idea in class, I think. Let's begin to wrap things up for today. These sessions, although they were scheduled for an hour, I'm now seeing we could easily go on for 2, but that's all right. So I think I want to wrap things up a little bit, kind of selfishly, but what are you guys currently working on as far as self-publishing goes? I know, Kelsey, you mentioned you hadn't published anything for a while, but I know you're working. I know you're working.
Yeah, I'm currently working on coloring a 25-page of Fisher and Hugh origin story, and it's driving me crazy and I'm hitting my head against the wall because I'm not happy. But I'm going to eventually print it out and I'm going to sell it for $10 because it's in color. Therefore, it's $10 at a con. And then in other classes, I'm also I real quick cheat code for school. If you want to do a story, but you don't have the time to, cheat it into class work when you're able to, if that makes sense. So that's what I do with all of my projects. It's big brain. And I have like 4 pages each of 2 different stories. I'm just going to put that in a book together, print it out, sell it for $5 a con. So
Nice. Always working that angle, Kelsey. I see the
yeah.
always looking for an easy way in and out, just grifting, just kind of looking,
You know me.
looking for your angle. I see.
Yep.
I see. Good advice. What about you, Khalid? What are you working on currently in the self-publishing world?
I just published Stay Woke to my website on Sunday, so kind of close out Black History Month. And because I'm a workaholic, I've already started thumbnails for my next comic.
Nice. And that's in the Stay Woke universe, right? That's all kind of connected.
No, I'm writing Stay Woke #2. I'm doing the thumbnails for Dark Watch #7.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, see, like you have like 7, like 6. You're so good, man.
Yeah. So book number 7. Those are your 2 main properties, though. You got Dark Watch and Stay Woke. Yeah.
Those are my 2 babies.
Nice. All right. Well, very good. We'll look for those from you guys in the future. We're going to keep an eye out for both Kelsey and Khalid at conventions, whether they be Dragon Con or if Atlanta Comic-Con happens again at some point. When it's safe, you guys.
Yes, only when it's safe. Comics cannot protect from COVID. Don't listen to the lies.
It's called Comic-Con, not COVID-Con. But I want to take the time and thank you guys for spending time talking with us about your experiences with self-publishing. It's been super helpful. So thank you, Kelsey and Khalid, very much. Thank you, students and attendees. I see we had someone sneak in that's not a student right now, but it's all right. It's okay. Thank you for joining us, and be continuing to share the links to hissyfit.com. This will go up later today, and keep sharing those links. They're working. I'm seeing traffic on the site go up. And it's all, well, not all, but majority of it is focused on the Artist Alley. Yes, that's awesome. So
it'd be really great if I had a store attached to it.
It's not too late. The week's not over.
That's right. Etsy, www.etsy.com.
That's right. Go tonight, set up a Ko-Fi, whatever. Yeah, just get it done. Well, good. All right. Well, then that's it. I'm gonna wrap things up. But thank you guys. Look for more from us throughout the week. Have a good rest of your day, and we'll be back.
Thank you so much for coming.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you
Yay.
guys.
Thank you.
You.
I love you,
Thank
Kelsey.
you.
Bye, Kelsey.